This presentation was given in Yorkville, Illinois on February 2015 at the Chapel on the Green by organist Martha Price and me, Howard Manthei, to commemorate the 160th anniversary of the building's construction. In this segment, we'll concentrate on the congregation's history. Information for this program was obtained from a number of sources, and we thank all of them. And if you have any additional information or corrections, please feel free to drop me an email at the address on the screen. Here's a photograph of some of the materials we use thanks to the Yorkville Congregational Church. These books date back to the very beginning of the congregation in 1836. These two publications were of special value. The three steeples on the right-hand publication indicate that congregations merged over time to form what we now know today as the Yorkville Congregational Church. The first was the Pavilion Baptist Church, and the Bristol Baptist, and finally the Bristol Congregational. I'll start with the Pavilion. The Pavilion community was located southwest of Yorkville, about 5 miles. It was a stagecoach route between Ottawa and Chicago, basically on what we know as Route 71 today. Now, all that's left of the community is the cemetery, but as you can see, there was a church and a school called Pavilion Academy. And here's a list of some of the businesses that we know existed at the time. Somewhere around 1845, the community established a school called the Pavilion Academy. It served as a school during the week and a church on Sundays. In 1850, they built a church, and that was a wonderful structure for the community. Here's a picture of the congregation in front of the building. Now let's go to the second congregation, the second church involved. And that was the Bristol Baptist Church. I'm sure many of you know that the town located on the north side of the Fox River originally was called Bristol, and that's where this building was located. In fact, it was located on the west side of the town square that we know today, just around the corner from Chapel on the Green. Here is an inset picture of two of the current duplexes that exist exactly where the building was originally. Now, lastly, the Bristol Congregational Church, or today's Chapel on the Green building. It was established, as you can see, in 1836. Now, you may want to stop or at least pause the presentation for a moment to read the screen. Basically, there were 3 families that started the congregation, and again, pause if you wish. Here's some additional information from Mr. Munson's booklets. Again, stop if you wish to read the screen. And Arthur Hill in 1934, and then Reverend Hicks back in 1877 in his History of Kendall County, describes some of the early meeting facilities of the congregation. Again, pause if you wish. And here are the 3 church buildings. Now, in 1920, as you can read, the Congregational Church was renamed by a vote. And in 1934 program, the 2 congregations, the Bristol Baptist and the Yorkville Congregational Church, worked together in many ways. Here is a program that lists 2 clerks and 2 moderators, 1 Baptist and 1 congregational. This timeline summarizes the history of the 3 churches. First, in the early days, an academy was built, a school in the Pavilion community, and that church was established in 1836. And this was the growth period for that stagecoach community. They built their church in 1850. The second church, the Bristol Baptist, was established in 1834. They built their church in 1857. And lastly, the Yorkville Congregational Church of today was established in 1836, and the building constructed in 1855. And this year, 2015, we're celebrating the 160th year of that construction. A reed organ was purchased, we know, for Pavilion in 1873, and of course you'll hear more in another segment about the Chapel on the Green's pipe organ that was purchased in 1899. Now, as the Pavilion community dwindled, seeing that over time the stagecoach business faded, the two congregations merged into the Bristol Baptist Church in 1904. And that remained the same until 1920, when the two churches merged with the Yorkville Congregational Church, which then became known as the Federated Church. Now that merger lasted all the way up to 1959, and in a vote, and as the Bristol congregation was dwindling in size, then the church's name was changed to the current one today, Yorkville Congregational Church. Here's a broader timeline. Statehood for Illinois starts in 1818. Now the Black Hawk War ended in 1832, and that encouraged more migration out west. Congregational Church, as I mentioned, started in 1836. Then they used a village schoolhouse, purchased an old store for meeting, and finally Kendall County came into existence in 1842. The next year, the congregation built a brick church somewhere. We're not sure where the location is. They adopted a hymn book, and then in 1852, the brick building was sold. And that's when plans were made, and finally in 1855, the present building, the Chapel on the Green, was dedicated. The cost of the construction was $1,000. Of course, the Civil War followed close behind that, and around town there were some other happenings. The Yorkville Dam was put in, and then 1857, a nationwide recession and financial panic centered around the railroad industry. And that concludes the discussion about the congregational history. If you have a need to go back and review, you can do that. Otherwise, you can click the stop button at the bottom. And this is officially the end of segment number 1.